What do you want to be when you grow up? The only answer I remember ever giving is when my mom asked me in 6th grade, and I said I wanted to be a professional student. I loved learning. Still do. I did not give that answer because I had any particular liking for school. Early on, I figured out that I could just phone it in. I didn't have to try very hard. In school, I mastered faux achievement, the art of jumping through the hoops without mastering the material. Had I liked school, I probably would have envisioned myself as a teacher. My book, More Joy, More Genius, is about how to get schools to stop letting faux achievers, like me, get rewards that we don't deserve. Schools can do better by supporting the joys that lead both teachers and students to the deeper learning that produces real mastery. School, for me, was just something that I had to put up with. Learning was always much bigger and better than school. In fact, around that time, I was becoming aware that there was a wrongness about school. Something was vaguely bothersome about how learning happened there, in contrast to the out-of-school learning that I truly enjoyed. But I didn't have a way to express my growing sense that school did not support the joy of learning. One day, as we were lining up at the end of recess, Clark Jett gave me my first idea of how to articulate it. Clark and I were enrolled at Signal Hill Elementary, part of the Long Beach Unified School District. We were in SHARP, a magnet program for students who were smart but not quite talented and gifted. It was 1978 or 9. We were bused in from Lakewood, a mostly white neighboring city. Their idea of desegregation was busing us in but keeping us in separate classrooms. Our only chances to meet the other students were before school, if our buses got there early enough, and at lunchtime. In the cafeteria and at lunch recess, we mostly kept to ourselves, and so did they. There was only one black kid in the program, and he was bussed in too. In that moment, at the end of recess with Clark, he pointed out that we were bussed in because the adults were playing a big game, and we were the pawns. Clark's observation was my first anchor for understanding that vague sense of wrongness that I had about school. Despite my negative attitude toward school, I was fortunate to be offered the opportunity to attend 3 different magnet programs. I accepted the offers to attend SHARP for 5th and 6th grades and PACE at Long Beach Poly for high school. I declined the offer to join the TAG program during junior high. As I recall, my choice to attend Bancroft, a regular junior high that I could ride my bike to, was informed by some resistance to the busing and a sense of being a pawn. The decision to attend the PACE program for high school was informed by my boredom in the regular program at Bancroft and how college was on my mind, thanks to my oldest brother Jim, who was just out of high school. PACE stands for the Program for Accelerated Curricular Experience. It was all about college preparation, so I went back to putting up with the daily bus commute to a predominantly black school so I could ride the rails of being college-bound. Despite gaining obvious advantages from the school system, I still had that sense of its wrongness. I still felt like a pawn being offered some advantageous opportunities. Despite identifying as an enthusiastic learner, the demands of school took their toll. In high school, I developed symptoms of toxic stress. Insomnia, constipation, hemorrhoids, lovely stuff like that. At the same time, I was cursed with potential. My teachers lamented that I was plenty smart enough to do good work, but mysteriously, I didn't have enough motivation to be conscientious about getting it done. Relative to the standards set by my college-bound peers, I didn't get very good grades. In Chapter 1 of my book, More Joy, More Genius, I shared the story of how I used faux achievement to substantially improve my SAT scores. Faux achievement is a pervasive pattern in our school system. It affects both students and teachers. Everyone I've ever talked to who was successful in school admits to doing it whenever it suited them. I was able to game the system to get into an elite college, but in the process my enjoyment of academic learning continuously diminished. After leaving college in 1989, reading for pleasure again took over 2 years. I had accepted and played out my role as a pawn in the public school system in exchange for getting into Reed College. Unfortunately, I was so motivationally damaged that I dropped out after 3 years. I finally completed my undergraduate degree from Reed in 2012, 25 years after starting. My thesis was about patterns of motivation, and it was later published in a peer-reviewed academic journal. That motivational damage that delayed my college degree was preceded by disengagement. My practice of faux achievement throughout my schooling was one symptom of it. According to Gallup student poll data, the national rate of student disengagement in the USA is on the rise. Between 2011 and 2017, the rate of student disengagement has steadily risen 13 percentage points. And they are not just mildly disengaged. 9 of those percentage points were to the category Gallup calls actively disengaged. This means that they may be undermining the teaching and learning process for others. The Carnegie Foundation, a major source of funding for educational research and reform in the USA, issued a report called Motivation Matters that points out the importance and feasibility of solving these problems. Surveys have consistently identified an engagement gap, a divide that some researchers call both more pernicious and potentially more addressable than the achievement gap. Gallup also says that 70% of teachers are disengaged. In the book, I explain a comprehensive estimate of student disengagement that takes dropouts, underachievers, and overachievers into account. It suggests that the rates of student and teacher disengagement are roughly similar, which is consistent with psychological research suggesting that motivation is contagious. And this is not an issue that is confined to the schoolhouse. Gallup recently reported that globally 85% of employees are disengaged, which causes approximately $7 trillion in lost productivity every year. They also reported that in the USA, the 70% rate of disengaged teachers matches the rate of our national workforce. If we're serious about the notion of career readiness, the rampant disengagement of the workforce suggests that the system is severely underperforming. I understand that I benefited from my schooling, but that does not mean that the price I paid was appropriate. While it's true I got more than the academic basics, the trade-off was that my motivation for engaging with academic activities was being destroyed. My joy was being stolen. To be clear, I am lamenting how that system robbed me of the joy of serious discipline, how it made my learning shallower than it should have been. While I was not seriously disciplined about academics during K-12, I did practice an Indonesian Kung Fu style for 5 years after leaving Reed, and came to understand the inherent joy of real self-discipline. I have been on a quest for decades now to figure out how to prevent schools from stealing children's joy, and to help create the deeper learning that is needed. I know that it was not the intention of my teachers and principals to rob me of my joy, but that is what happened. And it continues to happen in K-12 in spite of a lot of very well-intentioned hard work. Teachers and principals' intentions do not change the fact that there is something about how the system works that causes the joy to dissipate. The system is what I focus on in order to understand and articulate what is going on in K-12 schools. In this video series, I want to introduce you to a few basic ideas from my book, More Joy, More Genius. Part 2 is about how we can deepen the idea of the basics. There is something more basic than the 3 R's of reading, writing, and rithmetic. That episode is called Back to Basics 2.0 because the field of psychology can help us install a major update, a new version of what counts as basic in K-12 schooling. Teaching the 3 R's of Basics 1.0 and beyond will be far more successful if we teach Basics 2.0 first. Thanks for watching.